I never thought an old mirror could change the way I slept at night. But when I picked it up from a yard sale across town, something felt wrong before I even carried it inside. The woman selling it looked tired, like she hadn't rested in weeks. Her eyes darted to the mirror over my shoulder as if she expected something to crawl out of it. She didn't say much when I handed over the money, just that her grandmother had owned it, and it was time to let it go. I brought the mirror home and propped it against the wall in the spare room, a little storage space I used for boxes and things I didn't want in the way. It was tall, maybe 6 feet, framed in carved wood that looked almost black. The glass was clean but seemed to hold a faint shadow, like a smudge that wouldn't wipe off. The first night, I closed the door to the spare room and went to bed without thinking about it again. But a noise woke me around 3 in the morning. A soft tapping, rhythmic, like someone drumming their fingers on glass. I lay there, holding my breath, listening. The tapping came again. I tried to tell myself it was a branch against the window, maybe the heat expanding the walls. But when I sat up, I realized the sound wasn't coming from outside. It was inside the house. I turned on the lamp and crept into the hall. My heart was hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. The spare room door was open about 2 inches. I knew I'd shut it. I never left that door open. The tapping stopped the moment I touched the doorknob. The room felt colder than the rest of the house, enough to make me shiver. I stepped inside. The mirror was exactly where I'd left it, leaning against the wall. For a second, I thought maybe it had been nothing. Maybe I was just worked up for no reason. Then I saw it in the reflection. Something moved behind me. I turned around so fast. I nearly fell over, but there was nothing there. Just boxes and a stack of old blankets. When I looked back into the mirror, the space behind me was empty. No movement, no shadows. I tried to convince myself it was just my mind playing tricks. But the air in the room felt wrong, like it was too heavy to breathe. I shut the door, this time making sure the latch clicked. The next morning, I tried to move the mirror out to the garage, but when I touched the frame, it felt warm. Not like room temperature, warm, like something alive. I pulled my hand back and just stared at it. That night, I slept with the bedroom door locked. Around 2 in the morning, the tapping came back. Louder this time, faster, like fingernails drumming on the glass. I covered my ears, but I could still hear it, vibrating through the floorboards. The next day, I called a friend who knows more about antiques. When he came over, he wouldn't even go near the spare room. He just looked at the door and said, "You need to get rid of that thing." I didn't wait. I dragged the mirror out to the curb and left it there, not caring if the neighbors thought I was crazy. That night was the first in a week that I slept without waking up, but sometimes, when I walk past the window that faces the street, I swear I see the faint outline of that mirror still leaning there, even though the trash collectors took it away. And when the house is quiet, I hear the tapping. Just for a second, then it stops. It started with the porch light. I'd moved into this small neighborhood because it seemed safe. The houses were all old, built in the 50s, with big porches and overgrown lawns. Nothing fancy, but peaceful. The house next door had been empty for years. No cars in the driveway. No sign anyone ever came by to check on it. Then one evening, I was taking out the trash when I noticed the porch light was on. I stood there a minute, trying to figure out if I'd just never noticed it before. But I knew I had. That light had always been dead. I tried to ignore it, but the next night, the light was off again. The night after that, it was on. I started to watch the house more closely. Sometimes the light would flicker, like someone was standing just out of view, flipping the switch on and off. Then came the movement. I was up late reading in the living room when I glanced out the window. In the upstairs bedroom of that house, I saw someone standing there, a shape in the dark, motionless, just looking out. I couldn't see any details, just the outline. It was enough to make my chest tighten. I called the police. They came out, walked the property, even went inside. Place is empty, one of them told me. Probably just shadows. But that didn't explain the footprints I saw in the dust on the porch the next morning. They were small, like a child's. I thought maybe some local kids were sneaking in, but that didn't explain how the upstairs curtain would move even when there was no wind. Or why, sometimes, I'd hear a faint humming when I stood near the property line. One night, I decided to film the house. I set up a cheap camera pointing out my bedroom window. At 2:30 in the morning, I woke up with the worst feeling I've ever had. Like something was in the room with me, watching me breathe that I checked the camera footage the next day at exactly 2:30. The porch light turned on. Then, slowly, the front door opened by itself that a small figure stepped out onto the porch. It was a child, or at least it looked like one. No face, no features, just a dark shape that turned toward my house. The video ended there. The battery died, even though I'd charged it all day. After that, the noises started. Tapping on my windows at night, scraping sounds on the walls, a voice whispering my name when I was alone. I moved out 2 weeks later. I couldn't stand it anymore. The day I left, I glanced back at the house one last time. The upstairs curtain moved, like someone was waving goodbye. I used to work overnight security at a small office building downtown. It wasn't the kind of job that paid much, but it was quiet. Most nights, I'd walk the halls, check the doors, and sit in the lobby scrolling through my phone. One night, just past midnight, the alarms went off. Not all of them, just one motion sensor on the 3rd floor. I called it in, like I was supposed to, and grabbed my flashlight. When I stepped out of the elevator, the hallway was colder than I'd ever felt. My breath came out in little clouds that I tried to tell myself the air conditioning was just acting up again. But deep down I knew it wasn't that. The motion sensor light outside Suite 312 was blinking. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was empty except for rows of cubicles and a big conference table. The blinds were drawn tight over the windows, but I felt like someone was watching me. I walked to the far end of the room, checking under desks. Nothing. Then I heard footsteps behind me. Slow, deliberate steps crossing the carpet. I turned around, but there was no one there. That's when the conference room door swung shut by itself. I ran to it, yanked it open, and shined my light inside. Nothing. But when I turned back toward the main room, every chair was pulled away from the desks, like someone had been sitting at each one a moment before. I backed out into the hall and radioed the main office. While I waited for someone to respond, I heard a woman crying somewhere down the corridor. It wasn't loud, but it was steady. Soft sobs, like she'd been crying for a long time. I walked toward the sound, even though every part of me said to get back in the elevator and leave. The crying led me to the storage closet. The door was ajar. When I pushed it open, the crying stopped. Inside was just a mop and a bucket, nothing else. But as I turned to leave, I heard a voice whisper right in my ear, "Don't go." I sprinted back to the elevator, heart pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. When the other guard finally showed up, I tried to explain what had happened. He just nodded and said, "That's why no one wants this shift." I never worked another night there again.